the briefing that was held by the Ministry of Civil Aviation, wherein the Union Minister of Civil Aviation along with the Secretary of Civil Aviation both were present. That has come to a close. And the key points that were mentioned as part of that briefing include some of these. And I'm going to, mention some of those. In fact, the Union Minister was mentioning that a forensics team will now be investigating into the matter. So that's the big highlight that's coming in a high-level committee that the government has formed that is going to be meeting on a Monday. He also said that there is a need to do extended checks on Boeing 787 series. 34 fleets as part of Boeing series are present as part of the Indian aviation sectors. He also mentioned, and I quote, we have strict safety standards in the country and we are following robust protocols, and the committee, the high-level committee that's been formed, will have access to every evidence and records. And of course, I'm now joined by a live guest who's joining us right now to decode what's the way forward so far as investigation into the matter is concerned. I'm now joined by Devesh Agarwal, aviation analyst and founder of BangaloreAviation.com. Thank you very much, Mr. Agarwal, for joining us here on ET Now. First things first, what is your overall view on the PC and government's approach and the steps that have been taken? And of course, at this point in time, we're learning that there are multiple investigations into the matter and a 3-month time frame has been fixed and has been set by the government.
Firstly, thank you for having me. The minister has briefed the press and it is in a way reassuring. He's kind of giving information what the government has already taken steps on. I really would have hoped that he would have also announced the composition of the other foreign investigative and other agencies and organizations that will be joining the AAIB team in investigating this accident. It would give us better clarity. I'm given to understand, but that I would expect and request confirmation through your channel that the UK's AAIB and the US NTSB will also be joining this team. Of course, everybody is wondering what has happened. And we see on media reports that apparently the Mayday call said loss of thrust. It would have been great if the minister had mentioned this or confirmed this, because if that is a piece of information that they have ready access to, it's not, the air traffic controller can easily, those tapes are easily available, but I'm not sure if by law they have to be sealed and et cetera, et cetera. Going forward, as you very rightly pointed out, the most important key to decoding this puzzle is both the digital flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. As I am given to understand, the Boeing 787's DFDR is a very modern one. It can record more than 2,000 parameters in real time. So with that, the investigators can literally recreate the entire flight in a simulator right down to the minutest details. So definitely the cause of the accident will come out. I'm also understanding, as per ICAO rules, I think 13, an interim report is to be filed within 30 days. That is the requirements of ICAO. So one can expect the government to provide us some kind of updates. I think, going forward, maybe a week from now, or a week from the crash, maybe about 19th or so, and then maybe another 2 weeks after the crash, right, and then about a month after the crash. That right would be my time frame for seeing what goes forward.
Right.
The investigation itself will take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, depending right on the complexity, how soon they can find the answer. And
yes,
as I keep explaining, accidents are yes never a result of a single cause. It could right begin somewhere, but then the subsequent steps that have been taken, absolutely, or what steps led up to that, that is what takes time to, sort of assemble the whole story, right, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Mr. Agarwal. And in fact, when you mentioned about ICAO, ICAO actually rated India above global average. It gave India category 1 status. But we'll come to all of those points in just a bit on what more could be done so far as aviation safety in the country is concerned. But coming back to the press conference, now the government is giving a 3-month time frame. But, would it help if the government perhaps were to come out with a preliminary status report? And do you see that happening, given the fact that, so many lives have been lost and it's one of the biggest disasters to have happened in recent times? And secondly, I want to ask you, while this high-level committee has been formed, but the measures and the steps that the government is taking, is it enough to prevent such future accidents from happening?
See, literally, in the aviation community, it is a kind of a slightly, I'm going to make a slightly provocative statement, and I apologize in advance. It is not my intent. See, every air accident investigation is meant to be as a learning experience to improve it. Aviation today is so safe. Billions of passengers fly, and we keep getting one-off accidents, which is, of course, one too many. The intent is always to be as close to zero as possible. The challenge is literally we say, standard operating procedures are written in blood because the learnings from all the previous accidents are what are incorporated into modern day procedures and various steps that are taken. So yes, there is anxiety to learn the reason, but an aircraft is an incredibly complex machine. There is so much human interaction at play. What happened before the aircraft took off? What were the steps leading up to this accident? What happened? Okay, there is a mayday call loss of thrust. What caused that loss of thrust? We know the act itself, but what subsequently happened or what caused it, that is what takes some time. And I would urge everybody, just please take some time, take it, be patient, and an answer will come out for sure, and it will be a detailed answer because the whole world, this is the first loss of a 787. The whole world is watching this accident and what is the results of this accident.
Right. Absolutely, and which is what is putting a lot of focus on what the Union Minister had to say, what the Secretary of Civil Aviation had to say. And at this point, let me also bring on this broadcast Mark T. Martin, who is the CEO of Martin Consulting. Thank you very much, Mr. Martin, for joining us here on ET Now. You also heard what the Union Minister for Civil Aviation and, of course, the Secretary stated. They have given a time frame of 3 months. Of course, we were hoping some sort of a preliminary investigations or a findings report to sort of come out, but we do know as of now that there's going to be a high-level committee that's going to be probing the matter. Then you also have investigating teams from Boeing, from Tata Group, from UK, US. These are all also investigating into the incident. In your opinion, how do these help the cause of civil aviation safety? And at the end, when all of these investigations come to a close, what is your big hope? What are your expectations? And what do you think that all of these investigations will achieve?
This is going to be a global investigation. We've got NTSB, we've got EASA, Transport Canada, Control, UK CAA, we've got DCA Malaysia. In fact, even I've just heard this morning that CAA China is going to be sending a delegation to investigate as well. Let's understand the backdrop of where we are without being biased over here. It's very, very clear to understand that India has been always level 3 downgraded by ICAO and EASA for the last 5 years. 10 years, our safety record has been the worst, with several findings by EASA, the FAA, and the NTSB repeatedly. Even on ICAO audits, these ICAO audits can be downloaded from any forum, including the DCA website. India has always been slammed for safety violations. Last 5 years, we've had more than 35 crashes of this country, because when you look at safety, you also include helicopters and all aircraft. It's not just airliners. And we have had an Air India Express crash as well. This investigation is going to be an independent investigation. It's not going to be AIB. It's going to be a global affair. It's going to be absolutely transparent, absolutely unbiased, structured, defined within ICAO cost cap as well. So that means under cost cap, we will have regional ICAO representatives taking an active part in this investigation. Also, I want to highlight one more very relevant point here. 3 months is impossible. By the time everyone get together, submit, but by the time the code of inquiry happens, when the investigation gets concluded, look, guys, this is not just about the DFDR or the CVR, or it's not going to be a quick fix. Even if the Tatas want to get involved, it doesn't really matter because they are the operator. Eventually, we have to understand that Air India is owned by a Tata and it's owned by a Singapore Airlines up to 26%. And Singapore Airlines is equally responsible because the management of Air India is with Singapore Airlines. So it's very, very clear the investigation is going to be independent. It's going to be driven by the UKCA and EASA with the NTSB along with Boeing.
Absolutely.
Boeing is going to be an observer. Boeing cannot investigate its own aircraft. Let me be very, very clear. And furthermore, as safety agencies, this will create a rippling effect globally because one, it's not about, Ahmedabad. This is about India. Okay. It's an incident just happened in India.
Right.
Far too many incidents have been happening
Right.
in India. And also, I just want to highlight one thing. Air India bears the name India.
Absolutely.
All right. And therefore, we've always, Air India has always, for the last 20 years, been lambasted and slammed for government ownership and government control. Well, guess what? It's a private airline today. So all the more this investigation needs to be harsh. I urge the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, to be vicious and violent in this. It's high time heads rolled. We cannot have a wishy-washy, brushed under the carpet exercise.
Right, Martin.
This is going to take center stage right now.
Martin.
Yeah?
Yes. Absolutely, Martin, very rightly put. There are, that accountability has to be put. And in fact, we need to know who the buck really stops with. There are several parties involved here. You do have the Singapore Airlines. You do have Boeing involved here as well. And then, of course, Air India as well. And of course, the DGCA, the regulators as well. So all of those angles need to be probed in. All of those, the workings of all of those bodies needs to be probed in. And as far as, flagging of irregularities with Air India is concerned, well, I can see several of them were flagged in at least close to 10 of them were flagged just between June 2022 and January 2025. These were some of the observations of the DGCA as far as Air India is concerned. So, of course, that accountability has been put. But given the fact that this issue has gotten global significance and global attention, there are hopes that there will be stricter, penalties that will follow and, of course, stricter rules that will be put in place. At that point, let me go to you, Devesh, since we're talking about rules. India also introduced the Bharatiya Vayuyan Adhiniyam of 2024. It actually came into effect reportedly on 2025 January. It introduced stricter penalties for violations and did mention that there's going to be zero tolerance towards safety compromises. My question to you is that while the law has come into force, it has come into effect, but what about the enforcement of that law and, of course, the enforcement of all those directives that have been mentioned in this law?
You have hit the nail on the head. In India, we always make the laws. The gap is always in the enforcement of those laws. Mark was mentioning some very hard-hitting facts. We have had previously in 2010, I think, the Air India Express crash at Mangaluru. We've had a crash at Calicut. The Air Accidents Investigation Board, which is under the Ministry of Civil Aviation, has made certain recommendations. And this is where I keep urging the press, you in the media, you all are the best, how would I use the word, enforcers of our rights, because you can take the voice of the population to those in power. We should take a sort of a checklist of what were the recommendations, what have been done, what has not been done, and why has it not been done in 15 years? That will itself give us an idea that how committed is this government to civil aviation. Mr. Martin mentioned our Prime Minister. So I'm saying I look at the political leadership of the Civil Aviation Ministry, and then I say, is this government committed to civil aviation? That they will take this thing seriously. Maybe this accident is what they need as a wake-up call to be put on the world stage and be told that, this is a critical part of our nation's infrastructure as we step into the 21st century. We want to be, the next manufacturing center of the world. Aviation
Devesh,
is a very
actually, many experts have also stated, that so far as aviation safety standards in India are concerned, and particularly with respect to, this particular fleet of Boeing, there have not really been very many accidents. And of course, this is a once, in many years kind of a case. But let me take that point across to you, Mr. Martin. I was just speaking to Mr. Devesh about the Bharatiya Vayuyan Adhiniyam. What do you have to say when it comes to enforcement of these rules? Has enforcement somewhere been lacking, even though we've seen from the DGCA, they have given several, advisories to airlines, they have flagged off issues. So where really is the miss? Where are the gaps really?
The problem is all this while, no matter what we come out in policies, what we come out in these fancy acronyms and so on, here's a shocking fact. Do you know we have one DGCA person for 6 aircraft in this country? One DGCA person, one DGCA airworthiness officer for 6 aircraft. Whereas you go to the nearest average, even in Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, you have an average of 4 regulatory officers for one aircraft. Even Pakistan has 2.75 regulatory officers to one aircraft. Now, let's disregard Pakistan because their fleet size is minuscule. It's just about 200 aircraft. We have right now 3,900 aircraft, including private jets, helicopters, and small aircraft. Okay, imagine the ratio: 1 DGCA for 5 aircraft. We need to aggressively ramp up our oversight. My friend Devesh, I agree with him and what he said. The media should be a strong conduit. It should be a strong voice to take this message across. But we also have to be very, very clear that it is all about what you call surveillance, enforcement of safety airworthiness directives. We need to have spot checks. How many spot checks have been happened? You rightly pointed out in what you said. From 2021, after Tata SIA, Singapore Airlines, Tata took over Air India. Air India is the only airline with the highest number of violation fines and penalties. Now, how can we reinforce it? As simple. We need more people. We need more airworthiness inspectors. We need more guys out there to slam airlines. Air India has been if you do the math from 2021 till now, Air India has been fined with penalties to over 9 CR. That needs to be holistic. We need to increase that.
Right.
We need to hold not just the airlines. There's a position called the accountable manager, according to ICAO. Every airline has an accountable manager who's the CEO. When there's a crash, the accountable manager can go to jail. Do we have those laws here? No. The accountable manager and airline CEOs are considered celebrities and gods. This has got to stop. This nonsense has to cease now. Airline CEOs, airline management, the buck stops with them. They have financial control of airlines. They decide safety. They decide airworthiness. And you rightly said it correctly. You're spot on. Highest violations have been Air India. So it's high time. We need to arm the DGCA. We need to empower them. We need to give them the strength they need to go after and make sure, crack the whip, take a dunda, take a stick, and make sure airlines comply with safety and quality oversight guidelines, including spot checks, SAFA. This has to be done, and it has to be done now.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And all of those, measures need to come into effect as soon as possible. But, gentlemen, I was just wondering that, while you do have the regulator, you do have DGCA, but why is it that airlines need to be told by DGCA when there is a clear-cut list of directions, when there is a case of lives being involved, there are lives getting lost. So these airlines need to fix accountability, definitely, because it is about lives getting lost. And, of course, flyers, even as the country's aviation sector is only booming. Gentlemen, hold on to some of those thoughts. We'll come back to this discussion, but right after this very short break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're with us on News Now. And of course, this is our coverage of what exactly went wrong as far as that crash that happened in Ahmedabad is concerned. We also heard from the Union Aviation Minister, Mr. Mohan Naidu, of course, the Civil Aviation Secretary as well. They were giving us a brief information, preliminary information of that crash and what exactly happened. And of course, we're now given to understand that my colleague Prakash Priyadarshi, who was attending that press conference, is now joining us. Prakash, give us through the key top takeaways. And, is there an expectation perhaps from the industry that a preliminary report, I do understand that 3 months is the time frame that the government is looking at, but is there going to be any findings that the government is going to release so far as a preliminary investigation into the matter is concerned?
See, it was first press conference after this horrific, tragic, which cost around 273 innocent lives, and it was first such a press conference that the government was holding. The Civil Aviation Minister has clearly stated that the government will not leave any stone unturned to know the actual reason behind this horrific incident. In fact, a separate committee has been constituted by the government. It's a high-level committee which will oversee all the other factors, all the other angles behind this incident. The committee has been constituted under the chairmanship of Home Secretary. Secretary, Civil Aviation, DGCA, along with other officials will be part of this committee, which will submit its report in next 3 months. And it's a very crucial to know that what were the reasons that caused this incident. However, Minister has said that they found black box yesterday around 5 p.m. and now they're in position to know the actual cause based on the information's data and recordings that will be taken through this black box. So, of course, in coming days, we'll be in position to know the actual cause behind this incident. But meanwhile, the government is moving ahead with all these necessary support that will be provided to this committee. A separate committee is already under committees there, being chaired by AIB, which will oversee the technical aspect of this incident. So there are two committees which are being which are there already investigating this issue. One is being chaired by Home Secretary and other by AIB. So it's a very crucial development. The government has categorically stated that all the possible theory and the angles will be investigated thoroughly. Government will try to submit report within the next 3 months. Along with that, when it comes to this Boeing 787 series aircraft, which are 34 in number in Indian skies. Out of 34, 8 examination of 8 aircrafts have already been completed, and the government is now expediting its examination process. Along with that, one other important development that the minister has clearly stated that in next 3 months' time, the report will be submitted, and meanwhile, all the necessary support and assistance are being provided to the victims and state government. So it's a very crucial development. We are expecting that the government will come out with stringent protocols and guidelines that will be followed by the domestic airlines and all the carriers out there to avoid any such incident in the future. Back to you.
Absolutely, Prakash. It's very important. All of these investigations have to be time-bound, and we do hope that the government will keep, sharing information about the investigation, given the fact that the safety of flyers is involved here. And with this incident, there are several questions on that very important, point. Ladies and gentlemen, we continue our conversation with Devesh Agarwal and Mark T. Martin. Let me come to you first, Devesh. Now, one of the angles that has to also perhaps be looked at is the fact that, Boeing as a company has had many issues with its aircrafts. It's gotten a not so clean track record, whether it's about, the company trying to silence whistleblowers, whether it's related to engine icing problems, electrical system switches, which have led to reportedly extensive worldwide groundings. So the question is, why did authorities globally, regulators globally ignore these red flags? Devesh, you have to unmute yourself.
Big mistake. Apologies. I said I'm just going to take 30 seconds to build on what Mark said. We are talking about the DGCA being an independent regulator. There was a bill that was passed. I think it had been cleared by the cabinet somewhere in 2014 called the CAA bill. The intent was that passengers will pay like 50 rupees or something for every trip. And that's what would fund the regulator and therefore would keep the regulator outside the purview of government. That bill, I don't think has ever been brought to the floor of the parliament. So that was just building on what Mark said. The other thing I'm saying, if you notice, we have focused on Air India 787. Nobody has paid attention to the fact that Indigo is also flying the 787. Which it is leased from Norse. Now, I don't know if the Indigo 787s are powered by the Rolls-Royce engine or the same Gen X engine, but the government has completely overlooked it. Why is it, doing this kind of very piecemeal approach? Coming back to Boeing, just a simple statistic. The 787, as of today, over 1,150 aircraft have been delivered and are flying. Now, there were issues early on with the battery. That was the design that they found was a wrong battery design. It had a tendency to do thermal runaway. So they grounded the fleet till such time they could come up with a new battery design. Now, I don't believe battery design would be really within the purview of Boeing. After all, it assembles and designs aircraft. Battery would probably be outsourced. The groundings, what you're referring to recently, were all related to the 737 MAX. And in fact, the Alaska Airlines door plug blowout put a big stop. The
Right.
NTSB basically put a stop to Boeing's production. It was not the FAA. In many ways,
Right.
the US FAA
Right.
faces the same dilemma that the DGCA in India does, that they have to be a promoter of aviation as
Yes.
well as a regulator of aviation.
Okay.
It's like having to wear two contradictory hats.
Okay. Yes. Yes. So what you're essentially alluding to is the fact that, regulatory authorities, regulatory bodies in several countries face the same kind of challenges that, perhaps regulatory authorities here in India are facing. Just one final word from you, Martin, on the fact that, why were these issues, and I was just flagging some of those related to Boeing, why were these issues and these, warnings really ignored? What do you think, was the reason behind why these warnings were ignored?
Okay, so first up, let's clarify the problem with Airbus. Sorry, problem with Boeing. We talked about icing. Icing happens only in temperature freezing conditions. That's not related to India. And secondly, the aircraft that Indigo is operating is on a wet lease. It's not even registered in India. So the law applies to aircraft which are registered as Victor Tango. So the DGCA also cannot stop foreign airlines operating the 787 into India. That only happened when the 737 MAX. Both the crashes happened when the MAX was deemed unsafe across the world. Now, let's be very, very clear. The problem that whistleblowers have been talking about with the 77 Dreamliner production from South Carolina has been more of production quality. But guess what? The aircraft was flown for 11, 12 years in India without a hitch, without an error, without a snag. Even the battery problem was because of the lithium-ion batteries which caught fire. So the only solution Boeing could think of was containing the battery in a lead case so that the fire doesn't spread. It's the same lithium battery in our cell phones and iPads when we fly. So you really can't do much, but you got to live with that evil. The bigger issue here today is that this is a precedent. This crash sets a precedent for global 787 operators, which is why there's a very good reason why there's a multinational investigation team in place. And I know there was a CAA bill, but we also have to understand that DGCA has been the DGCA since 1980, and when there was a CAD, which also had the CAD bill. The challenge we have right now is also linked to airline responsibility. We cannot completely force this on DGCA and the ministry and say that, oh, your job is to be police. The DGC is not a Turumkan or a policeman. Yeah, it's a safety enforcer and an airworthiness enforcer. It is an airline's responsibility to ensure that what the DGC has done, and if the airline does not do it, the airline gets slammed, fined, and its AOC gets withdrawn. So we have those systems in place. Now, after this incident, after Mr. Modi's speech, I think it's very clear every airline is going to pull its socks up from Indigo to SpiceJet to Akasa. And they're going to start setting the house in order. But some amount of fear has to be instilled in them that, India and Mr. Modi is not going to be taking this garbage and bullshit anymore. We need to be a safe aviation environment, and we absolutely cannot afford to have any safety violations anymore, period.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not just safety violations, but, we have seen Devesh and Martin, we have seen several kind of delays. We've seen, mismanagement of these airlines really come to light. So all of those issues need to be looked at by these airlines, by these companies themselves. And of course, the DGCA comes in later to flag off whatever issues are remaining. And with that, I'd like to make one more point. While we have spoken about, laws, we don't need additional laws. We need accountability to be fixed and implementation of those laws. That needs to be smooth and that needs to be effective so that aviation safety standards can be brought up in the country and, of course, across the globe. With that, gentlemen, it's time's up completely on this broadcast. But thank you very much for joining us here on ET Now and helping us decode what really can be done to maintain safety standards of aviation in the country. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on this broadcast. Thank you very much for staying tuned.